Good morning, Nate.
Morning, Justin.
How's it going today?
It's going.
What do you got there?
This is little Charlotte. Every Monday I get the pleasure of being with her all day. And so she's going to be, you get two of us today.
Awesome. I'm sure she'll have a lot to add to the conversation.
She'll have something.
So Jim and JD are obviously not here today. So what we decided is, since they're not here to stop us, we're just going to take over the mics and do our own thing.
We're going to do it.
So as much as I was hoping that we would have a conversation this morning that was sports radio-like and we could talk about how great the Bengals did, I think we'll probably have to avoid that subject.
We will have to avoid it.
So just real quick, I mean, most people that go to this church know who you are, but the people that listen that don't attend here regularly may not know what your role is. So, Pastor Nate, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your role is?
Sure. I'm the youth pastor at both here and at Skyrocket, and I deal with teenagers from 6th grade all the way to 12th grade. And we have regular meeting times that we, like most normal youth groups, meet once a week. And that's what I do.
If someone has
here.
a youth that's in town, when do you meet?
We meet on Wednesdays from 7 to 8:30.
How do you? I hear that you say from 6th grade to 12th.
6th grade to 12th grade.
How do you handle that? Because there's a lot of changes in emotional development that goes on there.
There's a drastic difference from a 6th grader to a 12th grader. And actually, I mean, if you go look at other churches and other more bigger churches, they typically have a middle school pastor and a high school pastor because they're drastically different. But here, you get one, and the one does it all. So, it's a very huge gap developmentally. And most of the time, the middle schoolers want nothing to do with high schoolers, and high schoolers want nothing to do with middle schoolers. So I do my best to have the one meeting time, but keep them as separate entities.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Try to do my best to cater to both crowds.
What do you? What would a typical Wednesday be like?
Typical Wednesday, we meet from 7 to 8:30. Kids will show up, usually right on 7 because that is just the culture here. Yes, here. They'll show up right at 7 or a little bit after. We'll play a game. We'll have some hangout time. But we always have a gigantic fun game. Like one of the games we just played a couple weeks ago, people had to drink sodas through their socks.
Sodas through socks. How'd
Yeah,
that
it
work?
was always fun. But the cool thing, too, is I never, especially if you're new or if one of your kids is, more shyer than the other, I never force, those kids to play, the upfront games, only if they want to.
Okay.
So it's, oh, my. She doesn't like that. She wants everyone to play. But I typically just let the kids that want to play be the entertainment for everyone.
Okay.
Which is, it's
Kind of like
good.
a game show.
Yeah. So we do a fun upfront game. Then I teach for anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, not long. Just what Jim would call a little sermonette.
Okay.
Little message, something to get the thought-provoking conversation started. And then after I get done teaching, they go to small groups where it's based on high school, middle school, and then gender. So, they go and join their peers, and they talk about what I just preached on.
Awesome. And then do you do all this by yourself?
I have a volunteer team, but as far as orchestrating all the behind-the-scenes stuff, I do it all by myself. But my small group leaders are the real champions. They're the ones that, oh my, just having a hard time, aren't you? The volunteer small group leaders are the real champions. They do all of the conversation with the kids, all the dirty things. Not dirty things, but behind the scenes rough. They're dealing with the kids having some really hard times usually, or typically if I hear something, I push it towards the leaders.
Okay.
So I let them be the champions. I just do the behind the scenes work.
All right. And then why is youth important? Youth ministry important?
Well, the main reason why it's important is because they're in a very unique stage of life where they're very influenced easy. And you can teach a kid very early on the right way and wrong way to do things, but once they start like developing and thinking critically on their own and have peers that are doing the same, and like they only want to listen to like the peers, it's very important to have a good strong foundation in their teen years. I remember my youth ministry days of where I was in it, and I went through youth pastors like they were library books.
Yeah.
I think I had 4 youth pastors in my high school time. So literally like one a year. It was bad, but I can look back on my life and I can see where if I would have had a consistent spiritual leader pouring into my life, it would have changed a lot of things.
Youth was super important to me. I made a lot of friends in youth. But youth was one of those things when I went away to college, and I had gotten out of college, and I grew up in church, kind of went away from the church when I got into college, but it was always a lot of those early childhood church days, going to Sunday school, and then youth were the thoughts that I kept hearing in the back of my brain when I was making decisions. And while I did not always follow those, I think that really fit my foundation for who I am now. It stuck.
It stuck, but I mean, if you think about it, we're letting these kids who are still growing, developing, trying to figure out the world, figure it out on their own or with other people who are trying to figure it out. It's not a safe environment, high school is. Like, everyone's got their own opinions, everyone's got their own, and so having a concrete place that they can go to, and the biggest thing, honestly, is consistency. Kids want to know that you're going to be there through thick and thin, and creating a consistent weekly place for them and a consistent group of adults that care about them. That's what it's all about.
And I think it's important to have those characters where your parents are very important.
Absolutely.
But I think having some supporting characters
Absolutely.
in your life that you can rely on, because there's certain things that, as we experience things in high school, I went to my youth pastors instead of my parents.
Yeah.
Because either I thought that conversation was not appropriate, or I didn't want my parents to have thoughts about me necessarily, depending on what it was. But sometimes you just needed to lean on another adult.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, though, is like, you're not always going to be on good terms with your kids when they're teenagers. And knowing that you have good, solid, positive influences that they can go to is a win.
Definitely.
Like, I mean, I can't express that enough. Just having someone else able to speak into their life in a good way is worth its weight in gold.
Has your thought process with youth changed a little bit now that you're a dad over the last year?
It's changed in the sense that, like, I think, I mean, don't get me wrong. I have a degree in youth ministry. I believe in youth ministry. But it kind of just made it, like, more surreal and more like, wow, okay, I know that even if she does go to my youth group, I'm not going to be that guy for her. You know, the third positive person speaking into her life. But hopefully her small group leader can be that.
Yeah.
But But yeah, it's made it more, I don't know, seems more important now than ever in a weird way.
Yeah, it definitely probably, I would assume, hits more at home. What? So a lot of us listening and adults saw how COVID affected the church and how it affected adults. Some people couldn't work. Churches were closed. That foundation was kind of gone, and we had to go to online. But how has your youth ministry changed, or how has the kids changed, or are you seeing different things now out of, I know that was a lot of questions, but how has COVID kind of shaped things moving forward? Are things more important to you now than they were before?
I think, yeah, things are far more important because, I mean, I think what I'm about to say applies to adults as much as it does kids. COVID got us out of rhythm.
Yeah.
COVID got us a little lazier, a little, we should have things more catered to us, and like never step out of our house again because we have DoorDash and all the things that we never really have to leave. And the teenagers got hit with that too. Whereas like there's some kids that I would have said before COVID, I see them graduate out of the youth group. After COVID, I don't know where they went. They're probably still at home. They just got out of the norm and just realized, oh, I can fill my time with video games or other things.
We got filled with permission to do nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
And it became, that's what's expected of you, is to do nothing. And, that is definitely seems to be one of the downticks that I see from COVID. Has COVID made the youth better in the sense, like for big church is what I'll refer to it as non-youth, is it pushed online. Mm-hmm. It pushed us to find out different ways to reach out to people. What has COVID done anything good?
So I think COVID really weeded out the kids that were doing maybe youth group for like all the wrong reasons.
Okay.
Like maybe they were doing it because their mom or dad wanted them to and forced them to. Maybe they were doing it for social reasons. But the cool thing is now, on a Wednesday night, I know that every kid that's in that room wants to be there.
Okay.
Like they've made a conscious decision to come to youth on a Wednesday night. I can't say that I look in our crowd and I'm like, they're here because mom made them come. Or they're here because so-and-so's here. That's not the case anymore. The kids that are showing up are there because it was something they valued and they want to keep doing.
Okay. Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to see that it weeded out some, because I was one of those kids that was forced at some points in times, and there's still value in that. But I also see when you have a group, while it may be smaller, of like-minded individuals going for a common goal, you can actually do more good for the greater cause, like attract more people, and it just builds up better.
Yeah, it's COVID made the youth group rebuild itself and pretty much start from scratch. Because I remember like early on in COVID, we were doing youth Zoom meetings. Those aren't fun. There is nothing fun about doing a youth group meeting over Zoom. It was good though for the kids that like showed up and needed prayer and needed to talk and needed to process. It won in that category. But like it wasn't fun. I did games over Zoom and I tried all sorts of things. But when we came out of it, it was a whole different crowd. Like it's almost like the kids before COVID are not the kids that we have now. And it's cool, but it's also sad at the same time.
Yeah, there's definitely been a flip since COVID. It seems like a lot of things have turned over, and I don't know if it's the old analogy, kind of burn down a forest,
Yeah.
and then the regrowth of it is even better, and it's healthy, and what needs to be done. Have you noticed, are kids more willing to talk about what's going on in their lives after COVID? I know there was a lot of mental issues, depression that came out of COVID because people didn't like being trapped in their house.
Yeah. I that's a great question. And my answer, I would say yes. I'd say kids are way more open about their feelings and emotions than before COVID. And I think it's because they also got a lot of the language for it over COVID, because it was such a big deal. Mental health during that pandemic was huge. And they gained a lot of language that they probably didn't have, that helped them be able to articulate what they were going through and what they were feeling. And so, yeah, I think they got better at sharing. Because, like, I don't really lead a small group on Wednesday nights. I kind of just sit in between, and, like, if Matt or Brandon or someone texts me and says, hey, could you come down here? We need some assistance. Or, hey, we need something. Can you go run and get it for us? Typically the floater, making sure everyone's got what they need. But every time I go into a small group to deliver something or to sit in because it might be a little harder of a conversation, I hear some really great stuff of kids being completely open and honest about their feelings towards God, their feelings towards if they even believe in this religion that we have, or even their just feelings about what school is like and what bullying is like. They're being way more open, and especially boys are the tough ones.
Yeah.
Boys are typically not the ones that, like, if you go listen in on a small group, they're typically very surfacey. They're opening up more than I've ever seen before. So, yeah, I would say, to answer your question, yes.
And that's probably also a side effect of smaller, closer-knit youth group that you have now. Maybe not smaller in numbers necessarily, but if they truly want to be there, they probably feel safe with everyone that wants to be there as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've put my best foot forward in trying to do in the youth group, is creating a safe environment. A place where they can be open and honest, and they're not going to get judged. They're not going to get in trouble for, obviously I'm a mandatory reporter, so if anything needs reporting, it happens. But aside from that, we've created a safe environment for kids to open up and be honest. And a lot of that has to do with our volunteers. Like the fact that they are so chill and like if someone's dealing with a very hard question that they're dealing with in their life, our volunteers reach out and they maybe will meet up for coffee, maybe meet up for a meal or something, and they're not just going to leave them hanging. And so creating a safe environment for youth it's key.
How long have you been a youth pastor here?
I'm working on my 7th year.
Is that common?
No, it is not common. I haven't looked up any statistics within the past couple years, but I mean, you can ask Jim, the average length of like a youth pastor typically is anywhere from 2 to 4 years. Like it can go really short, or it can go, because typically youth ministry is what they call a stepping stone towards something else.
That longevity though, so a lot of the families in the church that have been here for a while, and the kids, they're very familiar with you. I have to assume that a youth pastor that is hanging around, or especially volunteers that have been doing it for a long time, also helps build that trust.
Oh yeah, consistency.
Because you said you had 4 different youth pastors in 4 different years of, it's probably at that point in time, how do I trust someone.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I learned to literally like just not take any of those youth pastors I had seriously, because I'm like, oh, you're not going to be here long, so why would I care to even learn your name? You're just a fill-in for the next guy, and then the next guy's the fill-in for the next guy. It was ridiculous. But yeah, longevity equals consistency, which equals growth.
So I have 2 younger kids.
Oh, yeah.
In the elementary age group. What as a parent can I do to help prepare them? Like if you had a manual for parents that said, hey, your kid, so I've got a 3rd grader, should be in youth in 3 years, right?
Yeah.
With the middle school.
Yep.
What can I do to help prepare?
I think the best thing you can do is keep them involved in the church. But also I remember when I was a middle schooler, because when I was in youth, we didn't have a middle school group. So it was just high school.
Okay.
So like I just kept looking forward, and my parents did a good job of like, I don't know, like talking up youth.
Okay.
They were
something to look forward to.
Yeah, they were always like, oh, you see your cousins in the youth group, you see how much fun they're having, what they're doing. Like, just wait, your day's coming, and when we get there, you're going to love it. And, like, they just talked it up. It wasn't anything spectacular, but I still looked forward to it. But the big thing is just staying involved in church. And honestly, I know that, like, some churches, their youth ministry is, like, gigantic and pretty much its own separate thing. But here we're not. We sit in church on Sunday mornings just like anyone else. And the other thing that you can do is make it not as scary for them. So like introducing them to the youth room, showing them that like, yeah, when you get older, this is where you get to be. And yeah, just hyping it up, keeping them in church and showing them the environment that they'll be in.
What if I wanted to become a volunteer? How do I do that? And what should I expect?
So how do you do it? There's several ways to do so. You can contact the church office and just be like, hey, I'm interested in doing this. You can just have a conversation with me, and we'll get something on the books. You can do it online on the volunteer page. Yeah, those are the ways that if you want to do it. Or talk to any of the church staff, and they'll talk to me and get it relayed to me. What was your other question?
What would expect of me, or what would a role of the volunteer? I know you said they kind of lead the small groups.
Yeah.
How, whether it be training or what are the real expectations?
Sure.
How hard of a?
It's pretty easy. The biggest thing you have to do is care. Chill. Down, Bessie. The biggest thing you have to do is care. Like you're gonna have to like pretty much take ownership of a group of kids, not necessarily as your own kids, but like of spiritually guiding them and helping them navigate life. But as far as the commitment, all you're committing to is an hour and a half a week. That's it.
Okay.
We do trainings on the last Sunday of every month. We'll meet down in the youth room for like half an hour, 45 minutes, and do some training. But that's it. It's a very low commitment. As far as what happens outside of Wednesday nights, that's completely up to you. That's if you want to take it to a whole new level. Like when I was a volunteer and a small group leader, I was a 7th grade boys small group leader. I took my boys everywhere. I went grocery shopping with them. I took them to like the movies. I took them to like arcades. I took them everywhere. I was also a college student, so like I had a lot of time and no family that I had to worry about. But you do what you want, and that's the beauty of it. So if you want to take the guys to see the latest Marvel movie, do it. Make it happen. That's the tricky piece is like when you're trying to navigate a family and other commitments, it's hard to do a lot of stuff outside of the church walls. But when you do stuff with teenagers outside of these walls, it pays dividends. It's huge.
Some of my favorite people in my life were the volunteers and the youth pastors that I had, and the ones that they took me skiing. Just those memories, because that was one thing I think when I look back of being in elementary school and as you look towards youth and stuff, was back then or where I was at, it was a work camp. But you start to do the trips, some fun stuff. We would go to Kings Island, which is in Ohio. I know you guys go up to Silverwood. And those things are fun. And those are the memories that stick with the kids. And you have those good memories and remember the people they're with.
Absolutely.
As a volunteer, you have an opportunity to be very, very impactful, it sounds like, with a very small time investment.
Yeah, and I always tell all my volunteers, like, if you're going to go spend money, like, on the kids, let me know. I'll reimburse you. I have a fund for that because I don't want to put my small group leaders bankrupt if they want to do stuff with their kids.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to do it without having to worry about a lot of barriers.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking time. Charlie, thank you. She did pretty good.
I'm glad you think that. I disagree.
But I really appreciate you being here. Yeah. We will have Jim will at least be back. Just a heads up to those who listen to this on the podcast or on YouTube. We will not have a release next Monday. We're kind of working on something, so it'll probably be next Thursday. So it'll be about 10 days from now. But we will have one next week, so don't worry. Jim will be back for that, and we'll see if me and Nate still have a job after stealing the mic and the cameras. So
Charlie's gonna replace me.
So all right, well, thank you very much, and everyone, just remember Monday matters.
Monday matters.